Hi everyone, the year's coming to an end and it's been a shocker, so let's look forward to next year. Here are my top 10 picks for the best historical games that are coming out in 2021 and beyond. Some beautiful, some disturbing, some weird, but all worth looking forward to. So let's get stuck in. I've split this video up into chapters which you can check out in the description or scroll along on the play bar at the bottom, so if you get bored of me banging on about one particular game, you can just skip ahead to the next one. If you enjoy the video, leave a like and let me know in the comments below if you agree, disagree, or there's any games that I've missed off the list. Let's get things started with Chivalry 2, the fast-paced medieval multiplayer slasher. I must admit I missed the original when it came out way back in 2012, but I heard it was surpassed pretty much by Mordhau in 2019. So I'm hoping that Chivalry 2 is going to learn from that and expand on the original. We already know that it's going to double the amount of players in-game, so you can have 64 player battlefields, and it will introduce horse combat. As well as all the classic online multiplayer modes, Team Deathmatch, King of the Hill, it will also feature a new game mode which will apparently allow you to recreate famous movie and TV scenes, such as the Battle of the Bastards from Game of Thrones. It's not exactly clear how this will work, but I'm interested. And of course it will have all the classics you'd expect from a medieval brawler: swords, spears, bows, siege weapons, and of course, gratuitous dismemberment. Nice. So I might keep an eye out for this one. Chivalry 2 is going to come out sometime in 2021. At number 9, Inkulinati, a turn-based strategy game set in the world of medieval illuminated manuscripts and marginalia. And if you're not sure what marginalia is, here are some examples. Basically, before the printing press, books had to be copied out, usually by monks, and, well, they got bored and doodled in the corners, hence marginalia. As you play through the game, you have to defeat your enemies by drawing a number of weird creatures, all with different abilities, and sending them into battle against your foes. And you're after ink, either by killing enemies or picking it up from the battlefield, and that will allow you to draw more and more creatures. There's actually a free demo of this on Steam that you can download, and I've been playing it the last couple of evenings, and it's a pretty fun game. It's a little bit basic, but I've been enjoying it, and I have to say I would give this 10 out of 10 for originality. I think the artwork and the setting is absolutely fantastic. And on a side note, why don't games have free demos anymore? Back in the good old days, I remember practically every game had a demo. Inkulinati comes out in 2021. Number 8, Viking City Builder. City builder game with real-time strategy elements. Design, build and manage your settlement, train an army, and, well, then go and kick the shit out of someone, I imagine. It looks like it's going to have the classic city builder elements of starting a small settlement, assigning tasks and professions to your people, managing the economy, and building your humble village into a mighty fortress. As well as collecting resources yourself, you'll also be able to raid nearby settlements and steal theirs. It's of course set in the Viking Age. From the late 8th century to the middle of the 11th century, Norsemen left their homes in Scandinavia and undertook large-scale raiding, colonising and conquest in Europe and beyond. And it seems the buildings are going to come straight from Viking history too. There's longhouses, boating houses, and also there seems to be some survival elements thrown in. There's dynamic weather cycles and changes, including the classic British summer. Lovely. And you can even get eaten by a bear. So I imagine in this game you'll start your village somewhere in Scandinavia, grow it into a city, raise an army, get them all on a boat, and then go and raid somewhere in England. Sounds great to me. One to keep an eye on, I think, and from the footage I've seen, it also looked gorgeous, this game. So Viking City Builder is coming out hopefully sometime in 2021. At number 7, Hellblade 2, Senua's Saga. The sequel to the 2017 action-adventure Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. The only thing we really know about this game so far is that it's going to be set in Iceland and have the same protagonist as the first one. And it looks even darker than the original, judging by the pretty gnarly revealed trailer. Like the first game, it will feature Senua, a Pict warrior dealing with mental health issues. In the original, she interpreted that as a curse and travelled through the Norse underworld to try and rescue the soul of her dead lover. And it looks like we're going to get more of the same this time round, except the darkness has been dialed up to 11. Historically, this game is also set in the Viking Age in the late 8th century, and Senua's a Pict, the Celtic-speaking inhabitants of eastern and northern Scotland. She's from the Isle of Orkney, and in the late 8th century is when the Vikings first arrived in Orkney, at the beginning of the Viking Age, which I mentioned previously. The original game won a lot of praise for its depiction of mental health issues, and what's exciting for me is that Hellblade uses Senua's psychosis as a platform to explore not just what she's going through, but the mythology of the period. It's a great way to make it immersive and impactful and tie it up in a story that you get completely involved in. So Senua's Saga is coming out probably, hopefully, sometime in 2021. I'll definitely be looking out for it. Number 6, War on the Sea, a real-time naval combat strategy game set in World War II, where you can command destroyers, aircraft carriers, submarines, and aircraft in the Battle of the Pacific. It's made by the same developers that made the submarine sim Cold Waters, which I absolutely loved. I'm a massive submarine nerd. In fact, I have a model of U-96, the submarine from Das Boot, on my desk. And so one thing I loved about Cold Waters was the dynamic campaign, which reminded me of the good old days of Silent Hunter 3, one of my favourite games, another sub-sim. And War on the Sea will also feature a dynamic campaign, as well, and this really excited me, a battle editor, so you can make and create your own missions and campaigns. The game's still in development, but currently there are 25 historically based battles, spanning the period of 1942 to late 1943 in the Pacific Theatre, which historically pitted the Japanese Empire, aided by Thailand and to a lesser extent the European Axis powers, against the Allies. A period that featured some of the largest naval battles ever fought, and it looks like you'll be able to relive a lot of them. It will come out probably in 2021. And number 5, Humankind, the 4X strategy game comparable to the Civilization series from the developers behind Endless Space and Endless Legend, Amplitude Studios. You'll lead your civilization across 6 eras of human history and decide how it should expand, develop and interact with other civilizations. The gameplay looks very similar to Civilization, of course, but Humankind is promising some distinguishing features, one of which is that during each of the 6 historical epochs, the player can choose one of 10 real historical civilizations and assimilate the bonuses and penalties of that civilization into theirs. As the developers put it, combining cultures to create a civilization that's as unique as you are. Now, picking and choosing bits of history and putting them into a melting pot sounds a bit immersion breaking to me. I think I'd rather just play as one civilization. We'll have to see how it's implemented. Maybe I'll eat my words. But it does basically sound like the classic board game History of the World to me, if you've ever played that. You choose a new civilization to play each game round, but the board game is asymmetrical, so some civs were more powerful than others. For example, if you got the Romans, you do really well, but in the following rounds, the person who was leading the score was penalised in their selection of civilizations, which worked very nicely. So I'm excited for Humankind, but I'm a little bit worried that it will turn to be a sort of soup of history, which doesn't really grab my interest. Maybe it's just me. There's obviously going to be loads of history in it. The game starts in the Nomadic Age, basically the Late Stone Age, and looks like it goes all the way through human history. There's 60 different civilizations, and the player will also come across certain historical persons and events in the game too, apparently. So, Humankind comes out April the 22nd, 2021. Number 4, Stronghold Warlords, the castle sim is back. This is a real-time strategy game set in the castle economies of East Asia, in China and in Japan. In-game you'll have to build and manage the economies of castles and wage siege warfare against your enemies. In terms of gameplay, there'll be a 31 mission campaign, multiplayer, skirmish and free build modes, and a new system where you can team up with AI warlords and issue them commands to take down your enemies. The game takes place between the 3rd century BC and the year 1200 AD, and so I'm guessing from the dates it will start with Qin Shi Huang, who conquered various warring tribes to become the first emperor of unified China in 221 BC, and it will cover the early and middle periods of imperial China up until the rise of the Mongol Empire in the late 12th century, when Genghis Khan united several of the nomadic tribes in the Mongol homeland and, went round kicking ass, basically. The game also says it features feudal Japan and the samurai, who were just coming into existence as warrior nobles in the late 12th century. It's also going to be the first Stronghold game to feature gunpowder units. I'm a huge fan of the original Stronghold games, which is why this is so high up the list. The original and Crusader are two of my favourite games of all time. In fact, the first video I made on this channel was about the original Stronghold, and I still replay that campaign just with a pure nostalgia about once a year. It all went a bit wrong for me when it became 3D. I never really got into Stronghold 2 or 3. It lost a certain something, and this game has got great potential, so I've got my fingers crossed it's a return to greatness for a classic franchise. It comes out on the 26th of January 2021. At number 3, War Mongrels, an isometric real-time tactics game following two Wehrmacht fighters on the Eastern Front during World War II, who eventually desert the German army and end up fighting a guerrilla campaign against it with the help of some friends. It looks a lot like the 90s classic Commandos to me, but set on the underrepresented Eastern Front of World War II. And hopefully with modern gameplay updates, I'm thinking of games such as Shadow Tactics or Desperados 3. The game's description on Steam highlights its historical accuracy with dates, locations, weapons, uniforms, in-game historical articles, and a campaign inspired by real-life events. It also supports co-op, and it states that it's going to be dark in content, and if it's dealing with the Eastern Front, that means it's going to be pretty dark. Around a third of all World War II deaths occurred on the Eastern Front due to intense combat, starvation, disease, and massacres. So hats off to the developers for covering an underrepresented part of World War II. I've got my eye on this. It's coming out sometime in 2021. At number 2, Age of Empires 4. The third game in the series came out way back in 2005, and after all these years, the empire building RTS is back. We don't know a huge amount about it at the moment, but we do know it's being developed by Relic, the creator of the Company of Heroes games. In terms of the history it will cover, it's going to apparently start a bit earlier and finish a bit later than Age of Empires 2, so if it starts before the Dark Age, maybe it will start with the fall of Rome, and maybe go past the Imperial Age up until the Renaissance, maybe the Age of Discovery. We'll have to wait and see. But it looks like it will be set mainly in the medieval period, like AoE 2. It's been confirmed that there will be fewer than the original 13 civilizations in Age of Empires 2, but they're apparently going to be more unique. They're focusing on quality rather than quantity, in their words. The Mongrels, for example, will play totally differently from the English. Those are the two confirmed civilizations at this point. The original Age of Empires and Age of Empires 2, for me, are almost unbeatable. I still have the original boxes from the late 90s when I was a kid. They were some of the first games I played, and I completely loved them. I still play the definitive edition of AoE 2 virtually every week, and seeing as it's covering the same era of history, Relic won't be able to simply remake Age of Empires 2. There's no point, because only people like me will find that a decent game to play. Most people will think it's a stupid, out-of-date, old-fashioned strategy game. So I'm really eager to see what Relic come up with. I think they're going to have to change a lot of the gameplay mechanics to make it more modern, and hopefully that means they won't ruin it. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, Age of Empires 4, I'm really looking forward to this one. It's to be confirmed when it's coming out, and I'm hoping it's going to be 2021. Before we get on to number 1, a few honourable mentions. Pharaoh, A New Era. A remaster of the classic ancient Egyptian city builder Pharaoh. The original is so old now that if you try and play it, your eyes will bleed.
Oh man! Oh god! Oh man! Oh god! Oh man! Oh god! Oh man!
And I'm hoping, as well as doing a graphics overhaul, they'll update the gameplay and the UI as well. Honey, I joined a cult. Create, customize and run your very own 1970s cult. This is clearly taking inspiration from events such as the 1978 Jonestown Massacre. Whatever you do, don't drink the Kool-Aid. This game looks insane. Hellish Quart, a physics-based, realistic 3D sword dueling game set in the 17th century. There's a free demo of this on Steam. Fair play to them. It's pretty ropey at the minute, but it has interesting potential. Maybe I'll just leave it at that. Which brings us on to number 1, Manor Lords, a city builder with real-time tactics elements. And if you're thinking, hang on a minute, haven't we already been through this? Yes, but this game looks flippin' incredible. You play as a medieval lord of the manor, and the game map is divided into regions. Each region has its own mix of resources and available building upgrades. And so once you get into the regions on the city building level, you can create, develop and manage your settlement so that it becomes bigger and wealthier. And of course, you can then recruit armies, peasant militias, mercenaries, even your own retinue, which you can customize, which is pretty cool. And then you can basically have a Barney with the next door neighbors in the region next door to you. It sounds a lot to me like the First and Second Barons' War in 13th century England, when noblemen rebelled against the king. And who knows, in this game maybe you'll even get to the point where you can take the king of the land on for control of the country. What I'm really excited for in this game is the interplay between all of the game aspects. So as the Manor Lord, you can raise taxes from what your subjects produce. Some you might give to the church as a tithe, a tax, and in return they'll give you influence in political and social affairs. And then the head honcho, the king of the land, would reward you if he's pleased with what you're doing. But it's basically the power structures of medieval feudalism all put into a game. And it looks like they're really paying attention to historical accuracy, taking inspiration from 11th to 15th century Europe. So for me, this game has got practically everything. I'm really looking forward to it. It's made a lot of people's lists for games to keep an eye on this year. I'm hoping it will come out in 2021. I can't wait. Manor Lords is my most anticipated game of 2021 and beyond. Right, so there we go. Let me know what you thought of my list in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. Have a great day. I'll catch you next time.